Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Ed Arnold and I'm Vice President of Products here at LeveragePoint. I'd like to welcome all of you to another one of our monthly webinars of thought leadership in value-based strategy. Sponsored by LeveragePoint. LeveragePoint provides the only software solution for value-based pricing. We offer a cloud-based collaboration platform that supports product innovation as well as sales enablement that changes the way companies create, communicate, and capture value. Find out more about us from our website, leveragepoint.com. Now, during the webinar, if you have any specific questions or comments, please feel free to enter them in the right-hand panel in the questions section. And we'll respond to as many of them as we can at the end of the session. Now it's time to introduce our today's speaker. We are delighted to have with us again noted pricing thought leader and author, Dr. Stephan Liozu. Dr. Liozu was most recently President and CEO of Ardex Americas, and while there was voted CEO of the Year in 2012 for mid-sized companies in the Pittsburgh area. He currently runs his own consultancy where he advises clients on innovation, business strategy, and value-based pricing. He's also a prolific author of business books and articles and is a popular speaker at corporations, conferences, and business schools in the US and in Europe. So welcome, Dr. Liozu. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Excellent. Well, welcome everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here again with you. I know we have a lot of people who registered. I welcome them here from the US and in Europe and Asia, wherever they are. Today you'll probably notice the change in the title of the webinar. As you know, I've been a very aggressive proponent of value-based pricing versus competition-based pricing and cost-based pricing. But the reality is that deploying value-based pricing is not an easy proposition. In the first place, it requires you to understand what value-based pricing is. In reality, not many companies actually do a pure version of value-based pricing. But generally speaking, what's happening in organization is it is first of all difficult to make the case, especially when you go through the turbulences we went through over the past few years. And if you do manage to get the case done, then there is a high resistance during deployment. And the resistance pretty much lays in the change management process and all the processes and the culture and the mindset that you have to put in place in the organization. So it's one of the cases, it would be a resistance upfront in selling prior to deployment, the case. And the second is during deployment, pretty much the project stalls or it's not well accepted in the organization. Next, please. And one of the reasons it's not well accepted or well understood is the fact that it's difficult to understand customer value. So if you go from looking at cost data and competitive data, it is easier to find. You could argue competition data is not easy to find, but it's more stable. It's easier to locate. Obviously, cost-based pricing is easier and stable because the data comes from your operating systems. And when you get into value, it gets more into the subjective area of customer perceptions, and also it requires you to be multidimensional in your analysis. Not only you look at the inside information, but outside information. You look at multiple stakeholders. You look at multiple players in the value chain. And value is future-oriented, which means that when you make the case for value-based pricing, you're going to project things that are in the future, not only what you're going to deliver to your customers as far as savings or incremental revenue, but also what you're going to deliver to your organization. So there's a lot of uncertainty when you get to understanding and really grasping customer value, which in essence creates a lot of uncertainty with the people you're going to talk to in order to get them on board to pay attention to value-based pricing. So it's not easy, and it's well documented that value is subjective, and actually it's very dynamic in nature, because you could ask customers today what they're willing to pay for something, and it'll change in the next hour, and it'll change again an hour after that. So it's not easy to set in a very stable environment, I would say. Next, please. So some of the barriers, and I'm not going to spend too much time on that. It's most of the time is due to poor execution, and you recognize here the 5C model of transformation that I've shown before in multiple events or conferences. But most of the resistance will be in the change area, where you do have a potential lack of support from middle management across the functional array. Also a very strong lack of organizational alignment when maybe the pricing team and the marketing team wants to do more value-based work, but in essence the signals coming from top leadership will be more on market share or on the sales volume. You also have issues with communication strategies and also thinking that value-based pricing or any actually large pricing projects for that matter is just like a switch on and off. It's going to require a lot of transformational work, whether you put value-based pricing or price optimization software or any other major change in your pricing strategy. So it is a question of change management, which at the end of the day is going to require a different way of looking at value-based pricing and a different way of selling it internally. Next, please. So in essence, in many businesses, especially in times of crisis, in times of turbulences or uncertainty, the core business becomes a fortress. And it is difficult to make changes in the core business and to sell them to top management, whether it's the sales leadership or the general management, the top leadership, or even product management or finance management. So in essence, you know, what I propose, and it's a little bit of a change of my approach in how to get value-based pricing in organizations, is you have to find a way to do it without telling them you're doing it, which is quite an interesting concept. And that's why I call the latest paper that was published in the PPS quarterly journal, it is better to infiltrate value-based pricing in the organization through the cracks than to try to go out and justify and sell a big bang change in pricing approach, which in essence will, based on what I've said, people will start resisting any change in the core business when there is so much uncertainty out there. So next, please. So some of the things that you hear, and you know, our priorities are set, budget, time, and resources are allocated. We cannot take another strategic project on. The timing is not good now. You know, we're fighting out there. It's a commodity world, and you know, I don't think we can put value-based pricing at this time. We shouldn't take any risks because you know, obviously, changing the language of the Salesforce and going out in front of customers and showing value instead of discounts is a risk, and you don't know if you're going to lose market share or not. There's a lot of reluctance to change, and you know, especially if you're in the crisis and you're still doing well, and you still manage to deliver some good level of profits. And why would you change something that works during the crisis? And then some of the reasons is commoditization of the core business. We're commoditized. There's no room for value in there. It's all price, 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 price. And the last one is, you know, we're an industrial company, we're a manufacturing company, we got to focus on market share to keep the plants running. So you see, those are things that you hear and that really make the core business untouchable. And what I propose is that if you, in pricing or in marketing, and you want to go to top leadership who have these views, then it's going to be not easy to go sell a value-based pricing implementation, and they may consider that too risky or too disruptive, and they may ask you to do something else. Next, please. So one of the ways to do it is to infiltrate value-based pricing, and this is what you know, I propose in the paper that I recently published in the journal Professional Pricing. So you pretty much find the cracks within the core business when changes are made outside of pricing, and you take the opportunity to introduce pricing concepts as part of the changes that are done by marketing. Now, obviously, it is under the radar, and it's not called a value-based pricing implementation, but you actually use the best concept in pricing as they're doing something else. Let me make, obviously, there's a lot of choices, probably more than 5, but let's look at price changes, for example. A price change is when you make announce price increase or price decreases, depending on what you're doing in the market, what signals you're sending, or how you want to manage your pricing. It is always done, usually a lot of companies will do 5% across the board, or will do a more of a segment-based approach on price changes, price increases. More recently, I've seen a lot of companies doing price optimization and also price increase at the SKU level, by customer, by product. Now, by doing this, it allows you to look at products where you have a greater pricing power, and maybe use value maps in that situation to set the price based on the value you deliver. So doing price increases, and usually the business is on board to do them when the top management decides a price increase is needed, then the pricing folks and the marketing folks can work together at looking at, okay, which are the products where you have greater pricing power, and maybe we can increase a little bit more than 2% because we can capture more of that value. So you could actually do value models, you could do value map, and show to them in that context, not telling them I'm doing value-based pricing, telling them, guys, we have a suite of products here that we can get more than 2%. And then create a value map, show them how it works, show a value model, and then show them that you can capture a little bit of the value pool, and then leave it at that. But at least by doing this, it's like subliminal selling. You're showing them the tools, you're showing them the methodology, the mechanics, and they already saw a value map or a value model. The same with the versioning of offering. When you go into category management and you have a good, better, best, now inevitably, if you do a good, better, best, there is probably a price strategy behind it. But when you get into the price setting of this good, better, best, or a versioning of multiple products within the good, better, best, then you can introduce there the value maps and the value models, and doing EVE in that case, and going into the process of sharing that value pool can allow you to have discussions around willingness to pay, around all the good stuff you do in the value differentiation that you're doing for customers. The biggest bang of all these 5 and the easiest way to introduce, infiltrate value-based pricing is through new product development. And I think this is when your core business is really a fortress, then you don't go big bang frontal attack of the core business, and you go through the infiltration during the innovation process. Now, obviously, that assumes that you have an innovation team, an innovation process, and you actually do innovation. Now, let's assume for a minute that most companies do some kind of innovation, whether it's service or new product introduction or development. Then you could work very closely with the innovation team, which typically the innovation team will be more sensitive to value messages, to value-based approaches, and to value-based pricing. And you work with them with the agreement of leadership to infiltrate through your innovation rate all these products and new services being introduced at a value-based level. So you right price them based on the value that you deliver through that innovation, capturing the value of your differentiation. And I found that very powerful, and actually, in my thought leading activities, I move more and more into the innovation space because it's an easier way to convince the organization through the new businesses, new business segments, new differentiation methodologies to go in and introduce better pricing methodologies and approaches. Now, you will find that it will be a challenge as well. It's not going to be a walk in the park, because traditionally in the stage gate processes or in the NPD process, you will have more of an engineering dominance, or R&D, or technology. So there's going to be a lot of focus on cost modeling, technology modeling, feasibility analysis. So you will have to introduce these concepts, which you could do through a kind of a webinar, internal webinar, or a training session, which I highly recommend for companies trying to get somewhere on value-based pricing, to put innovation, marketing, and pricing together to get kind of a kumbaya event. and let them see the light altogether about the value of using more value-based strategies. And the last one is user need segmentation. Typically, companies will do a traditional firmographics of segmentation by vertical, but more and more are moving into doing segmentation analysis, user need segmentation, and then when they do this, then you can also join in the program and introduce concepts of willingness to pay that are different by segment. I would say it's probably not the most powerful way to infiltrate. I would look at these 5, and there's probably more than 5. I would say the easiest way to infiltrate more of a value story in the pricing process is new product development, the overall innovation process, and then the price increases. There's no way now that companies with the amount of granularity we have in data and the use of CRM and marketing tools that you do across the board price increases. So it's a unique opportunity to go out and capture more value through some products that have greater differentiation. Next, please. So what you do then is you use, in the innovation pipeline, you use all the tools at your disposal. But I would caution that it is not you cannot make it only a pricing story. It has to be a value story first, because the greater the value attention, I would say the more powerful the pricing discussion in the end. So you always start with value in the innovation process, and when you're ready to launch, then you discuss the pricing strategy and the pricing tactics, maybe later in the gates. But you have to use all the arsenal of tools that are available for you as a pricer, more on the value side. So the USPs, the UVPs, the value proposition development, the value drivers identification, the stories on differentiation, the EVE obviously is one, and all these tools that you see very commonly mentioned in the innovation process. So if you look into the theory of innovation and you look at the front end of innovation, there's a lot of discussion on value prop and unique selling proposition, unique value proposition. The only limitation is that they do not actually go through the process of measuring that differentiation into dollars and cents, dollarizing it, quantifying it. That's where the pricing team comes in. And I conjecture that the innovation and the pricing team working together, it's a very strong and powerful combination. Because the innovation team, and then what I mean innovation is technology, techno-marketing, and all that type of people are very good at finding uniqueness and creating differentiation. And if you could tag along and help them with, let's measure it together and let's look at what could be the impact on pricing power, then it's an excellent way to get everybody start to work together and collaborate outside of the core business, when typically you will have a lot of resistance later in the commercial, in the commercial cycle. Next, please. So I'm going to show you a power of a quick win, which is something that will be published. It will be on a chapter in the next book called The ROI of Pricing, where you could demonstrate the power of value-based pricing by doing controlled experiment. And by control, I mean a very simple before and after. And you have to design it very carefully and very nicely. This one was an experiment for an innovative product, which had a great level of potential differentiation. And the control experiment was really set up to let the team up front set the price for our innovation based on the traditional way of doing business, which was cost-based pricing, which was, by the way, a very, very healthy level of gross margins. You could have very good results with cost-based pricing. I will say that. But at the end of the day, I look at introducing after the fact, when they came with the pricing level, and I would say they weren't ready to launch, but they were well ahead in the stage gate process, and the pricing discussion was done. It was set. It was in the deliverables. So I intervened as a top executive and went in and say, well, I reject that pricing level, and let's go and do some value-based pricing, which means I need to see the differentiation. Please tell me the value prop, tell me the value drivers. Let's measure it the way the best we could, and let's look at a different way of pricing it. Now, obviously, that's where you get into the you need to measure carefully the before and after. You really have to kind of not fully educate them. They have to do some exploration, and that was early on the transformation that we engaged in. And They came up with a couple pricing levels which were both rejected until they refined their analysis of value drivers, and we were able to not only set a higher price but also modify the offering of the product, because you do face some resistance at certain pricing levels, psychological pricing or ceilings that we couldn't go over, and we had to redesign the offering. But at the end of the day, just that one product we tracked for 12 months in the pricing council, and you could see the incremental impact of the before and after. And we're talking one product. So you track scientifically the contribution during your pricing and innovation council. So we had a very strong collaboration between innovation and council and the pricing council. And then we tracked that specific product, and at the end, they just got tired of hearing it, but we delivered $250,000 in incremental gross profit dollars with one product. Now, I didn't tell them we were going to do value-based pricing. We just took one product and we did some kind of a model, dollarization process, and we went in and got it done, priced the product, and launched it. And then we looked at it, and then we celebrated a quick win, and that was an eye-opener, not only for the entire team who did this, but also for the rest of the business and for top management. Because at the end, if you could do it with one product, then you could do it with 10 products. And if you launch 50 products a year, or 100 products a year, or 200 products a year, or if you have an innovation rate that's 30% of sales, then imagine the power of having a greater pricing level based on willingness to pay or value stories in the overall portfolio. Your mix will go up. Now, obviously, it is dependent on your ability to design innovation that creates differentiation, which is a whole different story. But generally speaking, you do innovation to create differentiation and create uniqueness. So that gets to a higher level of confidence, not only from a management perspective, from the pricing and innovation team, but also sales and product development and product management. So it is a way to infiltrate value in the story. It is not a deployment of value-based pricing. So you have to be careful how you set it, but these are little quick wins that can really change a culture slowly but surely. And the more you do this in the innovation process, the more these products get launched, and the more you actually infiltrate value-based pricing. And at the end, you're doing it without knowing that you're doing it. So those are two different approaches, if you see what I mean. Instead of telling the organization we're going to do value-based pricing and try to get it done, then you do it. You don't wait for their approval. You do it through different ways of entering through the cracks of the business model. Next, please. And one way to do it as well is obtaining that customer value modeler certification, which I created to help the pioneers in organization get started with value modeling. If you do get a few people certified in customer value modeling, and people watch that, and people try to understand what they're doing, and then you put value on the table, value on the radar, and you as pricing or marketing people go talk to your innovation staff, and you have the credibility of, hey, I went through a certification process or a training process on customer value modeling, and this is how it works. Let's pay attention. Then you start somewhere. You have to start somewhere, and you have to show that you have the credibility to do it. And one of the ways to do it is to get an individual certification for your own development as pricers or marketers. And then you continue slowly at spreading the love in the organization about how value can change gross margin and profit. And again, you do value-based pricing without telling them you're doing it. And that's a kind of a difference between what literature will tell you, let's go and adopt intentionally value-based pricing, which now I found in my experience working with many companies, it's difficult to sell internally. So you have to find ways as innovators and creators and marketers to do it by cutting it in chunks or infiltrating at various levels of the business. And the last thing you want to do is give up. You have to keep doing it because it is a necessity right now to pay more attention to value, and one of the ways to do it is through innovation. And then now I turn that to you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Stephan. That's an excellent presentation about value-based infiltration. I really love that idea. Very practical and innovative approach that I'm sure a lot of people are interested in. Actually, I'd like to back up a slide to look at that before and after. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of the folks who are listening to this are fascinated by that slide. You know, everyone's interested in ROI nowadays to measure success of changing either approaches or adopting new technology. You know, at Leverage Point, we often get asked this question by new companies who are considering us as a first step to infiltrate value-based pricing into their organizations. And one thing I just wanted to get across is that the good news is that with a cloud solution, you can deploy a proof of concept with a couple of product teams starting small, as Stephan suggested, and within 60 to 90 days, you would have enough data to support a strong business case. And we're doing this more often now, and typically we see, you know, ROI numbers in, you know, at least 3 digits by doing that. So just want to throw that idea out there if folks are interested in doing that as a first step. Would be happy to talk more about that. So before we get to our participant questions, and Stephan, you'll be pleased to know that a number of them have come in because of your presentation. And by the way, if folks want to add their questions to the list, go ahead. I just want to take another moment to describe why Leverage Point is one way to quickly infiltrate value. Because we're doing that right now with a number of companies in a variety of industries. And how this basically works is, you know, with a cloud-based platform, you get product, marketing, pricing, and sales teams together to collaborate on value-based strategy and to begin to share and then adopt best practices. You do that first by building compelling value models and then in communicating that value to customers. In terms of the communication side of things, you know, one of the things that we learned about this is that, you know, there's a lot of different ways you can communicate value. It certainly differs across industry and even within companies, and depends a lot on who you're selling to, what you're selling, and who you're presenting to. This is just a few of the many formats that we use to communicate value. So you'll see ROI, NPV, EVE, a lot of different options here, and these can be displayed on a laptop, but we've also started optimizing these displays for iPad tablets as well. So just wanted to share a few points about how we fit into this concept. Okay, I think it's time now for some questions. And again, this is your last chance to add one to the list if you want. We'll extend the webinar a little bit longer. Let me just start at the top of the list. This one came in really early, and the question is, how do we begin value-based pricing faster when there's stiff resistance from individuals inside the organization who either think that this is utopia or think that they're already doing it?
Yeah, I would say this is not an unusual circumstance, and you would be surprised the number of companies that think they're doing value-based pricing when actually they're not. And that's for me, it's always puzzling, because if you type value-based pricing in Wikipedia, you'll get a definition, and it's easy. Do you do that or not? So the resistors, I would say, you have to start somewhere, and that somewhere is someone that is some business leader or some product manager or some leader that's forward-thinking, cooperative, and understands that. So so obviously, if you have a lot of skeptics in the organization, then it will be difficult to start with these in the first place, especially if you do not have a mandate from top leadership. So I would recommend that you start infiltrating with companies that are willing, with partners that are willing to do it. Find your internal allies, ask for favors, so that you can show a couple quick wins. and then numbers speaks for themselves. So obviously you want to do a good job on these couple pilot projects and that helps convince top management. I can tell you if you can show that type of before and after controlled experiment, which in the chapter in the book that will come out, you could find the exact way we set it up. That is definitely making a strong send a strong message to top leadership to start paying attention. And then the skeptics can look at this and say, well, it doesn't work, or we're doing it, and you could show well you're not doing it. There's no other ways to do it, and the skeptics will be skeptics until if you look at the diffusion of innovation curve, you have the pioneers, the early adopters, the early majority, and the skeptic comes after that. So you have to really find the right people in the organization to do that.
Okay, so there are a couple questions related to the experiment slide. I'm going to try to combine them. The first one is, how did you measure the before and after? Did you release the product with cost plus price and then re-release with the value price? Could you give a little bit more background on the actual example that you provided?
That's a good question. Now, this was not a scientific experiment. I would say it was a good experiment, but it was not scientifically a setup as you would do a real controlled experiment. So what we did was we put the team in place as they usually do, and as they usually set the price, and then we, as in the stage gate process, when the price was set, put in the deliverables. This is where we established that as a set price. And then the differential then came from the repricing, and asking them to go back and reset the price and actually change in the stage gate process, change the offering and change whatever we had to do to get to the value-based price. And that was a second level of price setting with a second level of actual product offering. And then we launched the value-based product, and then we got the result of sales at that level. Now, I can tell you that the incremental gross profit we got would have been obviously the numbers would have been different and at the cost-based pricing level, but the volumes would have been bigger. So what we did is we compared the value-based price with the quantity of the value-based decision, and then we looked at what it would have been with the cost-based price, and that differential is $250,000. Now, you could obviously you could argue there will be other levels of quantities. It would have been different, but at some point, this is the data we had to work with to show the incremental gross profit at the volume, that we generated with. And I can tell you one thing though: that product was underpriced. We should have priced it higher, and we left a lot more money on the table. And we were very successful in the product, but we could have priced it differently. But it was a nugget, a piece of a quick win that we used it to promote, the value-based approach, not a value-based pricing approach, the value-based approach. Though it was not perfect in the design, I give you that, and you could reject the methodology. But at some point, you got to set your assumption, set your experiment in a way that creates confidence and creates a win for the team.
Okay, so there was one quick question about this presentation being archived. Yes, we will make these slides available to all participants, so look for an email on that. Plus, we'll have a recording of it as well on our website. So another question came in. This is a little bit of a challenge to the experiment idea that says, well, isn't this similar to trying to implement ISO or QS? The quality manager couldn't implement such a program on his or her own with a hidden agenda. So I guess it's sort of a challenge to this infiltrating idea. Any comments on that, Stephan?
Yeah, I would say one of the difference you have between let's say a Six Sigma, an ISO, or a 5S, or Lean Six Sigma versus value-based pricing is that people understand what it is, and it's easy to benchmark. If you go and look at your competitors or companies in your industry did the ISO, you can really generally look at the methodology and the scope and how many engineering hours that may require. But if you look at value-based pricing, it's very vague, and generally speaking, people define it in a different way. Some will say it's TCO, other will say it's value-added services. So there's a lot of unknown in value-based pricing. So when you go in and try to sell that internally, people don't know what value-based pricing is, but they'll know what Six Sigma is because there's a lot more education and publications on the topics. Now, and I would also say that if you look at Six Sigma, it's heavily, and the same with ISO, engineering, quality, and audit oriented. It's very internal oriented to get that certification, to get that title. If you look at value-based pricing, it's internal, external, multidimensional, super complex. Everybody needs to get involved because it really redefines the way you go-to-market strategy. ISO doesn't redefine your go-to-market strategy. It redefines the way you organize yourself and the processes you put in place, and you make sure you operate within these processes. Value-based pricing is super dynamic. It changes all the time. Competitors are moving. The customer perception of value are moving. So it creates a lot of uncertainty, which is difficult to sell. It's difficult to sell, and the scope of each value-based pricing implementation is different from company to company. So I don't have the perfect answer for that question, but I would say it's a whole different scope. It's a whole different design. And perceptually and psychologically, it's a whole different approach.
Answer. This is more of a comment, but I would be curious to hear your perspective on it. One of the ways I enter the cracks is selling on options of our core business products. They have clear value, and the customer has a choice not either to buy or not buy the option, and then apply it to the core product. That's an interesting idea. I haven't heard that that applied to options. So I was just wondering if you had come across that, Stephan.
No, that's a great point. And I think generally speaking, there is a misunderstanding that you can only do value-based pricing with differentiated products. And so I'm not surprised this is a comment. Generally speaking, when you offer stuff with value, then people think it's easier to do greater pricing or premium pricing or to capture more premium or more pricing power. And it's true. But you could do value-based pricing for commoditized product, for service, for, you name it. EVE can be done for all kinds of different things, from bundling to complex systems to commoditized product. If you're in business today, you're offering something that someone buys, and there is differentiation just in that, whether it's speed or it's a lower price. So yes, it is another way to infiltrate by looking at the special services or special options you offer, looking at modular approaches, and in essence having a price menu where you could offer things that the customer wants really, and you get them to pay for it. That's a good point.
We have one more in here. When the chairman is an accountant and the CEO is a former head of an ad agency, how do you position development and implementation of value pricing?
Wow. Then I would say you send them, a book. Well, you got to start somewhere. You got to show them, obviously, the science behind it. I think you cannot just approach them and say, hey, let's do value-based pricing. No, you have to, change your message and sell it as something else than just a pricing transformation. But there is a very, I do believe there is a strong relationship between the top management background and what they pay attention to, and the ability to change the pricing approach. And that's probably one of the most complicated case when, and I was facing that in my previous employments, when I was employed in other companies, when an industrial person or a finance person is a top gun in the organization, it's difficult to convince them, to do things outside of what they know. So you just have to bring the outside in and show them the success stories and, Send them a couple papers from HBR, MIT, Sloan, and make sure they read that. One way is to get very friendly with the executive assistants and make sure that they have a couple papers always on the stack of the pile to read around value. But generally speaking, these leaders will not change until there is a crisis, and then the crisis will come, and it'll be a pricing crisis or something like this, and they'll start paying attention, which is unfortunate. If you have a marketing person leading the organization, then that person will be more inclined to understand the segmentation story, the communication story, the value-based management story, so your chances of getting that accepted are greater.
The last, when I read that too, I mean, you have an accountant background and an ad agency background. Certainly it's left brain, right brain there. I mean, kind of building on that question, a lot of times a pricing manager is tasked with trying to bring value-based pricing into an organization. In terms of a practical first step, Stephan, who should be the allies that they should be seeking in this?
I would say marketing and innovation. Now, it depends on your definition of marketing. If marketing is a group of very technical product managers, then I would go to innovation. If marketing is a markets, based organization doing, market management or category management with, a lot of market orientation, then you could start with them because they understand the concept of segmentation. And value-based pricing, the first step is segmentation. So right there that's the reason why I say that a lot of companies do not do value-based pricing, because they don't segment. So I would say innovation and marketing first, and then go find anybody who's very friendly to you, who's got always supported you, whether it's a product management or sales leader, and do mini projects with people who get the story. You got to find these internal champions that get the story, or someone coming in the organization, a new leader, a new marketing person who's coming from a more maybe market-oriented company, and ask them to help you out with a couple projects. And it's just a matter of finding the right people to talk to.
Okay, we're still getting some more questions. The last couple, I think, are similar. One asks about success stories of value-based pricing in technology services, and then another related one is with systems and subsystems. Sort of solution sell approach. So. Any quick thoughts about value-based pricing in either of those situations? Is it the same approach? Any success stories or advice?
Well, I would say value-based pricing is a methodology, and it's got between 4 and 6 steps. The first thing to do is to really learn the methodology, and then you can apply it literally to any industry, any sector, any type of offering. Because at the end, once you do your segmentation, you will find differences in how customers buy. Some will be wanting the full enchiladas from you. Others will only want a kind of stripped down approach or stripped down offering. Some will want a focused approach. You got to find these pockets of customers that will respond differently. So whether you have very complex solutions, integrated solution, or you have a software with an hardware, it all starts with segmentation. And this is where it gets complicated, because segmentation, you could find different definition of segmentation. And if you look at the very successful companies out there, they're in a multitude of industry. Whether you look at Apple or the CPGs or some chemical companies, or the software companies, doing value-based pricing, it's doable. Whatever offering you have, you just have to be able to break down your offering based on what the customer is willing to pay for. And don't give everything to everybody. And I even conjecture that value-based pricing will help you capture more value, more revenue in the market. You will do cost cutting without cutting cost, because some people are not willing to pay for anything. Just give them the bare minimum. And third, because you're delighting customers with the right offering, your customer loyalty will go up. So it's a big bang once you get it right.
Okay, we got one last question, and this one was too good to pass up. Can you provide a method to breach the Salesforce fortress?
Well, the Salesforce fortress is a fortress because top leadership let that to happen. And usually, if there is a strong misalignment or strategic alignment at the top, or if the messages are not clear, if the vision is not clear, then you will find that the Salesforce will do whatever we do best, is do less value selling and more market share selling or penetration selling. But that's because they'll follow the orders. They'll follow directions from the top. So the first thing you do is you have to have a discussion of alignment in the C-suite. I know if you're in pricing, it's difficult to get that. And I know that if your CEO is not paying attention and that person allows the teams to have a silo management or not listening, not working in collaboration, it's going to be tough. But again, one way to do this is to find a friendly sales manager. There is somewhere in your organization a sales leader who has experience from another company, who has better results in pricing. Go find them and try to make them look good. Sell them a story of success, and they're going to shine, and the next promotion is around the corner, because show them the success stories from outside. Who's doing it in the industry? How successful are they? And get them on board. And then you do a pilot project with them, their sales team. Try to change that person and the team they have. And then that becomes a case study for the entire organization to pay attention to. That's the only way. Either it comes from the top with a strong alignment around value, or you have to find a strong champion in the sales team to help you create a case study and a success story for future projects.
All right, so thank you for extending your stay a little bit longer, and thanks for everyone. There's still a lot of people who are still online here, but I think we're going to need to wrap up. That's all the time we have left for today, and we'll be posting a recording of this webinar on our website by early next week. We've provided Dr. Liozu's contact information. If you have any additional questions on the topic, feel free to contact him directly. And if you have any comments to us at Leverage Point, please feel free to send them. I just wanted to make a quick announcement about our next webinar, which will be on October 23rd with Rafe Vandenberg of Pricing Brew. And the title of it are 7 Steps to Capture and Quantify Value in 2014, which is very timely because we know that a lot of folks are putting together their plans for next year. And this may be an interesting topic to check out. So look for an email with registration details soon. So thanks again, Stephan Liozu, for being with us today. And I thank everyone else for... No, go ahead. And thanks everyone else for watching, and until next time.